Hello, I am Jackie, and you are listening to Jackie Teaches English. This podcast is designed to help English learners improve their listening skills, gain new vocabulary, and learn more about the English-speaking world. Want to read along with the audio? Go to JackieTeachesEnglish.com, where you will find a transcript of this episode. Without further ado, let's dive in. I have always been fascinated by accents. I love listening to someone who has an accent different than mine, and I'm always trying to detect where a football player or manager might be from when I'm forced to watch Match of the Day with my husband. I think accents are truly amazing, and some people are frustratingly good at mimicking them. If you mimic someone, it means that you are copying their voice, behavior, or mannerisms. Even though I have studied many different languages, I'm disappointed to say that I'm pretty terrible at imitating accents. It is sadly something that doesn't come naturally to me, and I really wish that it did. I admire actors who can flawlessly put on an accent for their character and no one is the wiser. The expression "no one is the wiser" means that nobody is aware of something that has happened or is going on. Many British actors, for example, can play American characters and no one is the wiser. It's frustrating because American actors typically are less successful at this the other way around. Regardless of not being able to pass for an Irish woman or being able to imitate an Australian accent, I really love studying the mechanics of accents and helping my English students with their pronunciation and speech. Recently, I became a certified accent specialist, which I'm really excited about, as it has given me the knowledge and tools to help non-native English speakers improve their clarity and confidence. It also inspired me to explore this topic of accents with you for this episode. So just what is an accent? Well, everyone has one. And that is actually something that many people don't realize. We may often say that someone else has an accent, implying that they are the odd one out. But that's like saying that that person has a face or has a body. Of course they do. We all do. Instead of asking whether or not someone has an accent, the real question we should be asking is which accent do they have? An accent simply refers to our manner of pronunciation. This isn't to be confused with a dialect. These two terms aren't interchangeable. Whereas an accent solely describes how someone pronounces words, a dialect encompasses many speech features including accent, vocabulary, and grammar. For example, I have an American accent, but I also use the American dialect most of the time. I refer to the receptacle that you put waste into as a trash can, whereas my English husband would call it a bin. I walk down the sidewalk, whereas he walks down the pavement. These examples have nothing to do with our manner of pronouncing the words, but rather our choice of vocabulary. If you were an actor preparing for a role, you would definitely need to bear that character's accent and dialect in mind. A character from New York and a character from California would definitely not only sound different, but would also use different words and expressions. Earlier, I used the phrase "to bear in mind," which means to remember or to consider. We need to bear in mind that people across the United States have different accents and dialects, and that there isn't just one American accent. So we understand what an accent is and how it is different from a dialect. But another question you might be asking yourself is, how do we form our accent? As you might expect, accents and dialects begin to form during our early childhood, up until we are about 7 or 8 years old. It's during this time that children's brains absorb the language, sounds, and speech patterns around them. One common misconception is that children adopt the accent of their parents, but this simply isn't true. In fact, most children will sound more like their classmates and friends than their parents. I'm going to use my dear brother-in-law as a great example of this. His mother is Irish and his father is English, but he was born in Scotland, and as a result has a wonderful Scottish accent. He doesn't sound anything like either of his parents. This is down to a key part of human social development. We naturally want to fit in and not draw attention to ourselves. Most people, especially at early ages, don't wish to be singled out or to not blend in with those around them. If you blend in, that means that you look or seem the same as surrounding people or things, and therefore aren't easily noticeable. We use blending in art when we blend two colors together, for example. Kids will therefore be subconsciously more attuned to the speech patterns of their friends, teachers, and neighbors than those of their parents. And what happens if we move? Does our accent change? This completely depends. For example, if a child moves to a different part of the country during early childhood, they will adopt the accent of their new environment. One of my best friends was born in Hull in the north of England. She says that when she was little, she had a northern accent, but you would never know it speaking to her now. And that's because she moved to a different part of the country when she was still young. Research shows that if you move someplace over the age of around 10, you are more likely to retain your original accent because your speech patterns have already fully formed. That's not to say that your accent remains completely the same, however. I know for a fact that my accent has changed somewhat over time since moving to the United Kingdom as an adult. It has changed enough so that when I go home to Texas, people ask me where I'm from. And I've noticed my sister's speech patterns shift since she moved to Scotland. She uses different words than I do, and she has adopted speech patterns from my aforementioned brother-in-law. The word aforementioned is very useful. You use it in front of a noun that you have previously mentioned in the same conversation or piece of writing. If we break the word down, the meaning is clear. Afore is an old archaic word that means before. We don't use this anymore nowadays. So when I say my aforementioned brother-in-law, I mean the before-mentioned brother-in-law, as I spoke about him earlier in this episode. Instead of calling things little, my sister says we. So that little dog is that wee dog. I've also noticed she adds a at the ends of her statements. She might say something like, "You've had a hard week, eh?" Whereas maybe in our dialect growing up, we would have said, right? Or nothing at all. Maybe you know someone who has moved and they now speak a little differently than they did before. Maybe you do. The point is, our accent tells our story. My sister's accent paints a picture of a girl from Texas who has spent many years living in Scotland. Her dialect is influenced by her childhood, her current surroundings, and her social circles. And that's what makes accents and dialects so cool in my book. Everyone has a slightly different way of speaking based on their birthplace, their friends and partner, and their life story. Another useful phrase for this episode, I said accents and dialects are so cool in my book. The phrase in my book is just a more poetic way of saying, in my opinion. Learning fun idioms and phrases in a foreign language is really interesting in my book. Actually, the really interesting thing is a phenomenon that I heard about just this morning while watching the news. Many British children are picking up some aspects of the American dialect because they are spending a lot of their time watching American programs on TV and streaming. Apparently, it also goes the other way too. The British show Peppa Pig is so popular in the United States that many American children have picked up different pronunciations, like saying mummy instead of the American mommy, and tomato instead of tomato. It just goes to show that our language, accent, and dialect are constantly evolving based on the world around us, especially at a young age. And as the world continues to get smaller and smaller with globalization, it will be interesting to see how our speech and languages continue to change. And speaking of globalization, let's talk about accents when we speak a language other than our native language. When we speak a foreign language, we do our best to adapt this new language to the speech patterns that we already have. But there are new sounds and sound combinations that simply don't exist in our first language. So what happens? Our brain tries to find the closest sound that does exist in our language and applies it to the new one. For example, the th sound in English doesn't exist in most other languages of the world, making it a tricky sound for non-native speakers. English learners tend to substitute in a z sound or a d sound instead. So instead of saying this one, we might get this one or this one. And this happens in all languages, by the way, not just English. English speakers will substitute sounds from their accent all over the place when learning a foreign language. If you've watched Emily in Paris, you'll know what I mean. Instead of bonjour, you might hear an American say bonjour with that rhotic R at the end. I want to stress again that accents are amazing, and I think the world would be a very dull place if we all sounded exactly the same. But if you feel that your current accent or speech patterns are preventing you from being understood when speaking in English, just know that you can learn techniques to speak more clearly. It is nigh on impossible to sound like a native speaker 100% of the time when learning a language, but you can definitely learn to make the sounds of that new language with practice and the help of an accent coach. Okay, and last idiom for this episode, let's talk about nigh on. I said it is nigh on impossible to sound like a native speaker 100% of the time. Nigh on means almost or nearly. So nigh on impossible simply means nearly impossible, but not completely. And on that note, I'm going to wrap it up here. I hope you enjoyed this episode on accents and why we have them. Remember that you can access the annotated transcript for this episode along with information about online English lessons with me on my website, JackieTeachesEnglish.com. And if you're looking for individual accent coaching to improve your confidence and communication when speaking, you can find all the details there. And if you enjoyed this episode, please remember to rate it and follow me on your podcast app. This helps more English learners find us. Have a wonderful day wherever you are in the world, and I'll see you next time. Bye!